Hi, everyone, and welcome to this month's Co-working Idea Challenge. My name is Ashley Proctor, and I'm the founder of Creative Blueprint and the executive director for Co-working Canada. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the Co-working Idea Project, um, we are proud of the co-working movement that we've collectively created, but over the last few decades, we've noticed that the global co-working conversation has drifted from its core values of community, collaboration, accessibility, openness, and sustainability, and has drifted towards more financial and corporate interests. And so we know that colonialism and systemic racism and sexism, and there are many other disparities that exist, they also exist in our industry. And the intention of the IDEA challenges is really to bring awareness and to challenge co-working operators and communities worldwide to make sure that the co-working movement remains inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible. So each month we issue a different kind of challenge with new facilitators to bring some ideas that you could utilize in your community. And today I'm joined by a co-working pioneer and good friend, Iris Kavanaugh, and I'll let Iris introduce herself.
Thank you, Ashley. Hi, everyone. I am Iris Kavanaugh, and I am really grateful to be here with you today. I have been working in the co-working industry and the co-working movement for probably close to 2 decades now, about 17 years. And it has been a life-changing experience for me. And my goal is always to make co-working a life-changing experience for those that we welcome in, whether they are staffers, owners and operators, members, or guests. And I'm grateful to be part of the Idea Challenge this month. As we look to 2025 and really begin to understand what it is that 2025 is asking of us as community leaders, as individuals, and as citizens of this world. And here in the North American continent, we've got a lot going on, and I'm coming over from here. And so I'm looking forward with Ashley to talking about how we can move into collective resilience through the acts of collective care.
Mm, I love that. And it's a big part of why I really wanted to work with you on this challenge and on hosting this group. Maybe we could just start. Could you talk a little bit about, what this group might be and why we're bringing people together?
Yeah. So I began to notice, I think after the US election, and of course, this isn't a US focused group, but I did begin to notice after the US election a lot of people who are in the activist space and in the advocacy space feeling exhaustion, feeling burnt out. A lot of my elders in the activist space feeling really disillusioned, and a lot of them had given their life to this kind of work. A lot of people have given their life to activism and advocacy, and the sense of not just overwhelm, but a lack of stamina to be able to carry through this next aspect of the push for equality and equity and freedom and liberation for all people, and a real sense of feeling defeated. And I have felt that we need to come together in a way that will help us as leaders again of our communities or as personal leaders of our own lives connect in community, connect with like-minded folks, connect around the things that matter most right now on the planet and in our respective communities as a way to support each other in having the energy to take us to the next level. And right now, in the country that I'm living in the US, we are under, it's just a barrage. It has just been nonstop. And that sort of shock and awe campaign that we're under is causing people to freeze, to go into nervous system dysregulation and panic or freeze. And that really is the goal. And yet, together, we can support each other in this sort of in disentangling ourselves from that horror that we're constantly seeing and the shock of that, and rebuild our strength, understand where we're at as a collective and what we have power to do. And at the end of the day, um, maybe lean on each other in order to like keep from falling down some days, right? Because some days it looks like that. And so that was really my thought with how we could come together, not as a bunch of leaders who have all the answers, but more as people who are committed to a better world and to a vision of collective resilience through collective care, and need also individual care from a collective.
I think that's really important to end on that. And you mentioned, you're sort of coming from a US perspective, and there's a lot of activity happening on the political stage right now. But around the world, people are witnessing this, and they're experiencing versions of this in their own communities. And there are issues that we all face. We're all facing challenges. Life is not easy for most of us. And we know through our co-working communities that whenever there's a challenge, whether it be a financial one or if our beliefs and freedoms are being challenged as well, there is definitely a benefit in coming together in community, in holding space for these really important conversations, and just having a safe place or a brave space to sort of work through some of these issues. Um, to be in a community of care. And many of us are caretakers in our roles. And many of us run co-working communities because we're natural leaders and caretakers. We care about our community, our members, the residents. Um, and so we find ourselves holding space for others a lot. And that's actually why I really was interested in partnering with you in holding space in this kind of a group, because we're often in those roles. And I myself would love to be in a group where we can all just be together in these times. And I find that so comforting to know that I'm not alone in those big feelings. As you mentioned, like feeling sort of discombobulated, disconnected, and I've really been noticing in my body that I've been trying to detach. I've been sort of dissociating a few times over the past few weeks with some of the news coming out, and um, I know it's my body's way of helping me process, but I'm trying to be aware of the reason this happens. These are massive feelings, and they're taking time to go through. And I've been needing throughout the week to sit down in community with friends and family and just have these conversations. And so it really is a privilege and also an honor to be able to host a group like this for others to be in space with us. So. Um, I think I think something as well that maybe we could just chat a bit about is that feeling of overwhelm and like not knowing what to do, the way that that impacts our bodies and this kind of fight or flight state that we might be in. As you mentioned, it's intentional. Um, and we're feeling scarcity instead of perhaps like building in progress, and we're thinking immediately about survival rather than thriving and building, maybe as we were a few weeks ago. It really does feel like we've just shifted significantly, and many of our efforts still have to catch up. Do you have any advice for folks who are still in this early phase in their bodies of like feeling at risk, as well as there are people who truly are at risk in these times right now in the US in particular?
Yeah, I do. And yesterday I had to I really had to focus deeply on this because yesterday was the day that we learned that all funding from the federal government has of the US has been paused. So that's pretty much everything, right? That's education dollars, medical, Medicaid dollars, veterans benefits, social security benefits, school lunches, um, supplemental food benefits for people who have, who are marginalized and are struggling with food insecurity. The list goes on and on. All tribal nations in the U.S. So that was a really big hit to take yesterday. There are a lot of people in my inner circle who live with food insecurity right now, and live with healthcare insecurity and housing insecurity because of the economy and because they are either single parents or they have their caregivers of family members. And so I found myself overwhelmed yesterday. And um, the first thing I did was not the right thing to do because it caused me to feel more overwhelmed. So the first thing I did when I learned was I got on social media to see what folks were saying, to check in, right? To check in. But what ended up happening was that sent me into a really deeply dysregulated state. And I began to notice it because I was feeling like reactive to the things I was reading. I was noticing heat come up in my body or a feeling of tightness in my belly. And my mouth was getting dry. I was, to be honest, I felt like throwing some punches. So I'll just put it out there like that, right? There was a few things where I could feel the like anger coming up in me. And I do think that anger is a helpful emotion and I think it's useful. And we also need to know how to allow our bodies to dissipate, right? So that we're not carrying that inside and having that turn into internal conditions of disease and or further dysregulation. So the first thing that I did and the first thing that I would recommend is that I stopped. I put my phone down and I paused. And just that right there took awareness. The first thing before that, obviously, was the awareness that there was something going on in my body. So after pausing, I took some deep breaths. I focused on my inhale being shorter than my exhale. So through a longer exhale, we can reset our nervous system. So, an easy way to think about that is to do a 4 count inhale and a 6 count exhale. The longer we can exhale, the more quickly our body will come back into regulation. So that was first. And then I sat with myself and I had other things going on that I was needing to get done. People were expecting things from me. And so I needed to really be able to be in my thinking brain. And so I asked myself, do I have time to do this right now? And the answer was no. But this is really important to me, and so I had to make time for it later.
Mhm.
So I let myself know that I was going to take the time to understand what was truly going on for people once I got my work done. And then I got up and I took a little walk around. I looked at nature. I noticed some things around me. It's snowy here. It's not like green leaves and stuff, but I noted some colors. I noted some smells. And those things brought me back into my body. It's called grounding. Those grounded me. And that grounding allowed me to be calm enough to get back into my thinking brain. So the thing is that I was safe. I was sitting in a coffee shop working. Nobody was coming for me. I wasn't physically in danger. and my nervous system felt like it was, but I was, because I was physically safe, I was able to put myself back into regulation. But not everybody is physically safe right now. And so for those of us who might not be physically safe, the most important thing is to remember to source our own safety in those moments. And that can be really challenging, but it once again comes back, excuse me, it once again comes back to our breath. And one of the best things to do is to practice feeling our breath entering our body and leaving our body. And by doing that, when we're focused on that, we can't also be focused on the panic. And then find the one place in your body that is safe, even if it's like the pinky fingernail, right? And reminding ourselves over and over, my pinky is safe right now. I'm safe with my pinky right now. And this sounds maybe even dismissive or overly simplistic. And it is overly simplistic, but it is the most powerful tool we have in that moment. Because when somebody else is taking our autonomy away from us, giving them our autonomy by allowing ourselves to panic is exactly the way that we are no longer able to be within our own power.
Yeah, I think you're really capturing how important it is to stay grounded in all of this chaos. And the chaos takes many different forms. Again, that's the point. And we're all going through different experiences in this. Not all of us are under direct threat right now. But your nervous system doesn't necessarily know that. And when you are under direct threat, your nervous system can take you out of clarity and purpose, and your strength is diminished when you're panicked. And so I appreciate that no matter what state we're in or what we might be facing, that how essential it is just to get to that core. And that breath is really important too. As someone who has been persecuted for activism in the past, or had your freedom taken away, they can take your breath away from you. And that's something that's with you no matter where you are. And I think that it's really important to ground ourselves in that. And you were saying too about processing anger. I've been feeling a lot of anger as well too. I have a very strong sense of justice, and the injustice is just it's got me boiling. And I'm not a violent person. And you mentioned feeling like punchy, like I feel very punchy myself as well. But I also feel like it's very important to stick to my values around nonviolence in these cases, and thinking about how to channel that anger into action, into something productive instead of turning it into anger or hate against someone who might be on another side, who might have supported someone who's putting some of these policies in place. I don't want to direct my anger in that direction. That's not helpful at all. It really is the point, just to be distracted from the mission. And the mission, regardless of who's in charge or making decisions for us, has just been that we really need to take care of each other, regardless of what system we have to exist within. And I think that our anger and our frustration, for those of us who are safe, we could use it to catalyze change. And you and I had a conversation a couple days ago about this being a really special point in time, a really unique opportunity to make change. And this often comes up when I'm asked about the co-working industry and the movement, and the future of work. And I think there's a bit of crossover that this is an unprecedented opportunity to make change. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've really been thinking about that too, because when a system breaks down, we can do our best to, you know, plug the holes, if you will, and batten the hatches, right? Um, but if the system was never supporting everybody, is that what we want to do? Right. So, for example, Here in the US, we have something called supplemental food assistance or SNAP benefits, some supplemental nutritional assistance program. I think that's what it's called. It used to be called food stamps. So that there's an allotment of money that goes to each individual or each family, and that allotment never takes you through the month. So if that's all you have to live on because you are not able to work for whatever reason, there's many reasons that people aren't able to work, then that food money is never going to make it through the month. It's never enough to for one individual, let alone a whole family of people. And so yesterday, people's SNAP benefits were frozen. So we don't really know what this means yet, but it's what it looks like it means is that come the first of the month, folks who have been waiting this last week through maybe with very little food potentially are looking at not being able to buy food on the first of the month. And so we can lament people not having their SNAP benefits, and I am definitely doing that. But at the same time, is fighting to get those SNAP benefits reinstated the only thing that we can do? Or can we imagine a food distribution system that's run by the people for the people? So, my feeling is that this moment is really a sacred moment because it's that moment where, to take a gardening analogy, the garden is at the end of the season and it's starting to break down, and we can lament the breakdown of the garden, or we can know that everything that's breaking down is fertilizing what's going to grow next spring. And so next spring we're going to plant new plants and we're going to have a new garden system, right? So if we're able to right now understand that we are at a point where we have this ability right now to imagine the system we want to see in the world, and there's no reason for us to have any type of limitations on that, right? I say let's dream as big as we want and see what's possible, because this moment is about the collective. We see that everywhere. My social media feeds are filled with people saying, it's okay because we got us now, right? And that's how I feel. So, my feeling is like, let's dream as big as we can and create the most outlandish ideas for solutions and systems that will truly support everybody on this planet, all beings, all life forms.
I agree 100%. I don't think you could have said that any better. I feel like I feel like this work is always happening. I mean, we're always pushing for these creative solutions and thinking outside of the box. But you're right, this is really incredible opportunity to do so collectively, when everyone is aware that this is an issue. So, similarly to things we've been through in the co-working industry that perhaps were seen as threats, in our small communities, it's actually a benefit. It's educating people about the need. Many people might not have understood that food stamp program, until it was taken away. Most people don't realize that federal grants fund almost everything that happens
Right.
in this country. So I think people are learning, and that's helpful as well. As destructive as it is when we're thinking about that cycle of everything, the destruction happens, the chaos comes before a new birth and the new growth. And so, amidst all of this chaos, we're planting seeds and we're thinking big and we're dreaming more than we ever did before. And I think that that will lead to the development of those mutual support networks that we've been talking about, more mutual aid efforts and initiatives, people thinking really about this interconnectedness as an antidote to capitalism. And then also thinking about collective caregiving and caretaking in a new way.
Mhm.
Um, Rather than it being an option, it's essential. It's the only way that we're going to get by is by relying on each other. Now, if we're in co-working communities, we generally know that that's the way to go. We're always better together. But it's nice to see sort of everyone else coming to the same understanding through this experience too. And so um, I like to be thinking about how we could be coming together and really be rooted in resilience. And yeah, I maybe we could just sort of wrap this challenging conversation with a bit more of like what we were hoping people would get out of coming together in our monthly group and some of the topics we'll be discussing to give some folks ideas for what they might be talking about in their own communities, or also to welcome folks to join us in these monthly meetups to talk about some of these topics.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put my logistics hat on real fast. And so our thinking is that we will meet on the last Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. Pacific time, for 90 minutes. And this will be a very informal circle. And we will circle up together here. Um, Ashley and I are both consummate facilitators. We've been both facilitating group experiences for a long time. So we're here to volunteer ourselves as facilitators, but we're not necessarily here to determine what's being discussed or how it's being discussed. This will be very much user generated. Think of it as like, if you know what this is, an unconference, but a once a month unconference conversation that we're going to be having. And so, what I would love to see is to have folks who are in transition in their life, whether that be a divorce, a job, or transitioning from having a home to not having a home right now, a new company they're forming, whatever's happening, whatever's going on in your life, the transition that you're going through. I want to invite you into this circle so that we can transition together into a more just world and into a more happy world. Like I want to feel more joy. I mean, that's kind of like also it at the end of the day, right? We only have a certain number of moments in life. And I just want to say I'm sort of over letting folks who don't have my best interest at heart dictate whether or not I'm feeling joy today. So I think we could all just use a collective hit of joy, even if coming together brings us that. So from that logistics perspective, we'll meet once a month. Right now we're booked for a quarter. Um, See how that goes. But the idea is that we would have quarterly themes. And Ashley, I know we've talked about some really great kind of micro themes in this macro theme of collective resilience for collective care, or collective care for collective resilience.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just go through a couple of those right now, just because I think people might find they resonate with some of the different topics we'll be weaving through. And again, it's up to the group what we end up focusing on each week. But I think talking about this kind of leadership in uncertain times and grounding ourselves in all this chaos is really important. And leading with integrity and clarity, as I mentioned before. Also creating connection in times of division, trying to, again, channel this energy in a really positive way and foster trust and empathy and a dialogue between different people.
Mhm.
Um, and then really thinking about how we might, like you said, navigate these transitions, but turning them into opportunities for growth and change. Um, I love coming together and rethinking these systems. And thinking about them in a way that we could model our work towards equity, and I think also really focusing on how we hold space for others in these
Mhm.
times. Um, Finding hope in a group like this is probably the outcome that I am most looking forward to. Uh,
Mhm.
I feel like coming into a group and processing what we're feeling, having a really important conversation, then leaving with some tools that we can actually apply in our own communities and in our day-to-day lives is what I'm hoping to get out of it. And I
Mhm.
have a feeling that a lot of our participants will as well. And yeah, is there anything you think I've missed around some of the topics we might be addressing?
Um, I don't think so. I guess if there was any one thing that's sort of been in my mind, um, it, over the last couple of months that maybe wasn't mentioned, it's that I really feel that Again, I'm coming from a very US centric perspective in this when I'm speaking to this, but um, in 2017, so exactly 8 years ago, we were kind of living through a similar moment right now, and it wasn't it wasn't as extreme as it is right now. It felt extreme then, but we didn't know what we didn't know then, and now we know what we didn't know then. And one of the things that I think we made a mistake on for a while now is tone policing folks and making people wrong when they're trying. And I know I make a lot of mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. And I also know that, like, as a youth, I was super militant about my values and my views in the world, and punk rock about activism, right? And thankfully, time has tempered that. And I now really feel that a lot of what we need to do is listen to each other, and probably most especially to people whose viewpoints might be abhorrent to us, and work to create common humanity together. Because I think that by making people wrong, the polarity that we keep bringing deeper and deeper, like the cleavages, we are not hearing each other, right? And I am not at all saying that we need to negotiate with folks who want to see us not here on the planet, right? I mean, I'm not saying that if somebody with a marginalized identity is under threat, that they need to try and build a bridge with that person. That's not what I'm saying at all. But for those of us who are not in that moment under threat, there is a way to connect and create humanity. And so I feel that we need to make sure that everybody is heard now. And I feel a little bit odd in saying that because I think there's going to be some pushback against that. But my sense is that by leading with our hearts open and being willing to be accepting of our imperfections with each other, accepting of our human frailties, and of the fact that none of us is going to be perfect on this planet, um, that if somebody's willing to show up and start learning, we should welcome them in.
I think that's absolutely important. And it's really behind the co-working idea project as well. Like the intention is to create a space where we come together and have these conversations and we just challenge each other to try something new, think about things in a way we haven't thought about before, start a new conversation, learn something. But that's what brave spaces are. We make mistakes, and it's brave to attempt to learn something new, and it's brave to come into a space where you might not know other folks or you might not know if you're welcome, but then to show up and try. And I think that's really important in our spaces and in these conversations that we're holding and in the idea project overall, and in any idea work, especially with DEI being under attack right now. I think uh, there needs to be some work done on inclusion in that sense as well.
Hmm.
I love the idea of really hearing what other people are saying. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever experienced a government in charge that believes the things I believe or cares for people the way I think people deserve to be cared for, or provides basic human rights and needs in the way that I think we should be taking care of each other. So the way that I operate under this regime or another doesn't change, and whatever is happening around us is really just motivating to make that change come faster. So I love that perspective of really being open to hearing everybody, and there's just so much to learn when we can take a breath and and work through some of the anger that's being created, like on social media and in the news, very
Hmm.
intentionally to make us watch and participate longer. If we can really just ground ourselves, like you were saying in the beginning, breathe and have just an honest, open dialogue with people, I think that's a fantastic first step. Um, I think I just want to leave folks with thinking about some basic tips for self-care, reminding folks to get a lot of rest, and try and take good care of themselves through this time. Um, no one's looking out for us, and so we need to be looking out for ourselves and keeping our bodies and our minds strong for the years ahead. But I'm also leaving this conversation with some hope because I know that there are so many of us that are coming together and organizing and working to create these networks of mutual aid and support rather than, like you said, like plugging the holes in a broken system. I love that we're coming together in these ways to create a new one. And I hope that a lot of the folks out there who are thinking along the same lines will join us for our next event. And we'll post that information widely as well as on the IDEA project website so that folks can join and they can continue to join us or use that as inspiration to start hosting and holding space for folks themselves. Is there
Wonderful.
anything else you'd like
Yeah,
to say?
I think I'll add something that I was thinking of earlier, and you just kind of touched on it. So I'll add to that. We talked about people who are safe but experiencing a lack of safety, a feeling of lack of safety, and we talked about people who are unsafe. And I was thinking about other folks who, when people are unsafe, they jump into first responder mode. And I think you and I are probably people who can relate to that urge very much. And so, if you are somebody who jumps into first responder mode to go and support other people, what I want to remind you is that it's important for you to make sure you've got snacks and you're hydrated and you're rested. And so, just remember to take care of you. Don't forget your sunscreen, right? Bring your gloves if it's cold, because you matter just as much as those people that you are jumping into action to support.
Thanks, Iris. I
Yep.
needed to hear that. And hopefully others did too. All right. Well, thank you, Iris, for your time, and thanks for everyone who stuck with us through the entire video today. We can't wait to hear more from you all. And yeah, if nothing else, I hope you take from this to keep an open mind and to treat everybody well. And hopefully, we'll see you in the upcoming events.
Bye.
Thank you all.